Hi, my name is Jennifer Matos. I'm the Executive Director of the Noah Webster House and West Hartford Historical Society, and I'm bringing you the 9th edition of our Armchair Tour of West Hartford history. Today, I come to you at Beachland Park, which is in the Elmwood section of West Hartford, and is a park that is operated by the town of West Hartford. It's off of South Quaker Lane, and a park that probably many of you have enjoyed. Well, the story of Beachland Park goes back to the Beach family. The Beach family donated about 30 acres of land in 1932 that would become today's Beachland Park. I should also note that the site is also important because it also housed the Talcott Woolen Mill, which came prior to the Beach family. But there's so much information about the woolen mill that that'll be its own episode of the Armchair Tour one day, so stay tuned for that. So let me get back to the Beach family. So the first Beach member of the family to come to the West Hartford area was a man named Charles M. Beach, and he came to the town shortly after it became a town of West Hartford, and he came in 1859, and he purchased land up the hill behind Beachland Park, which would kind of connect with South Main Street. He had a house there on the property that was built in 1850, and today actually still stands at 11 Winthrop Road. So Charles M. Beach was a wealthy gentleman. He was the son of a president of a bank in Litchfield, and he himself was the owner of a company called Beach and Brothers Company, which was a manufacturer of dyes and chemicals. And that was located in Hartford, Connecticut. So he actually bought this property to really be a family summer estate. So he had multiple children, including a son named Charles E. Beach, who later takes over the business. So really, originally, this starts again, as many of the farms we've talked about, as a gentleman's farm. But he begins to establish a dairy business on this site. And what Charles M. Beach did is he really was committed to purchasing high-grade cows, which produced a high-grade milk. So he had kind of started this as a side hobby, and he called the land Vine Hill Farm. Now, Charles M. Beach, in addition to the original land he bought off of South Main Street, he actually keeps acquiring land that's adjacent to that, and eventually ends up owning all four corners of the intersection of New Britain Avenue and South Main Street. So he ends up owning this vast amount of land that is known as Vine Hill Farm. Well, eventually, his son, Charles E. Beach, takes over the farm, and it's really under his leadership that Vine Hill Farm grows into a very well-established dairy farm that really puts West Hartford on the map as a great place to have a dairy farm. Charles E. Beach attended UMass Amherst, and when he graduated in 1882, he took over the management of Vine Hill Farm. A few years later, he hired a man named Frank Stottmuller, and Frank Stottmuller was also a West Hartford resident who had graduated from Yale School of Agriculture, and together, Charles E. Beach and Frank Stottmuller really created a very successful milk business that really is what we think of when we think of Vine Hill Farm. What they did is they were very interested in creating a superior grade of milk, even kind of surpassing what their father had done, what Charles M. Beach had done, by making the milk a clinical quality. So what that meant is that they actually used a sanitization method they sanitize the cows, sanitize the barns, sanitize the milking equipment, and the processing. And the building that's behind me, which is called the Creamery, is actually one of the buildings from Vine Hill Farm that still exists today. It's really the only one besides the house. And this is something that they would be just keeping extremely clean and sanitized in order to have this really high superior grade of milk, which again they called clinical milk. Another thing that they did is they figured out how to bottle and preserve milk so that it had a longer shelf life, so that it could be transported throughout the region by train. And of course, we are in the Elmwood section of West Hartford, so we're in fairly close proximity to the train station. So they were able to ship their product around the region, which further enhanced the reputation of the farm. At its heyday, the farm had about 30 workers, in addition to caring for the cows and milking and processing and bottling. In addition to milk, they had other dairy products as well, such as butter. They also had an ice pond on the site. They had a grist mill. A lot of the workers actually boarded at the Sarah Whitman Hooker House, which is today still standing and is that's on the National Register of Historic Places. They used that as a boarding house because that was part of the beach farm at the time. They also had a blacksmith shop, so it was a really full functioning, pretty highly run dairy farm right here in West Hartford. That really, when people thought of West Hartford, this is what they thought of. They thought of the dairy farm, and Vine Hill was kind of the epitome of that. So Charles E. Beach actually gets married in 1895, and he marries a young woman named Catherine Coffing. Catherine was the daughter of a local West Hartford farmer, and they have two children, two sons, one Charles F. Beach in 1896, and then another son in 1899. And at that point, Charles E. Beach wants to build a new house for his growing family. So he actually sets about building an 8,000 square foot mansion right near his father's house. And that building still stands today. It's 18 Brightwood Lane. It is a beautiful example of shingle style architecture and is on the National Register of Historic Places. And some of you may have actually visited it because the owners generously allowed the museum to have a fundraising tour there in 2019. So some of you have seen the house that was built by Charles E. Beach. Unfortunately, Catherine dies in 1900 before the family can move in. When the family does move in, it's Charles E. Beach, the two sons, and three of Charles E. Beach's sisters, Mary, Frances, and Edith, and they were unmarried throughout their lives, and so they actually moved in with Charles E. Beach to help take care of their nephews. All four of the Beach children that lived in the house at 18 Brightwood Lane were very involved in the World War I effort. Charles E. Beach was the head of the Red Cross. His sisters were very involved in the Liberty Loan movement, and in fact they held a spectacular French market there to raise funds for World War I effort, and had over 1,000 people attend on this land that we're on right now. But World War I really took a toll on the economy. The business started to decline. They also, they lost workers who were joining the war. They lost workers who were going to work in factories instead of doing farm work. And so the business starts to decline. Enough to the point that by 1932, they are willing to donate 30 acres of the land to become Beachland Park that we're standing in right now. Charles E. Beach dies in 1940, and he leaves the estate to his sisters. The last sister dies in 1948, and the property goes to Charles E. Beach's son, Charles F. Beach, and he actually sells the estate and has the property subdivided to create developments that are you will see today in Elmwood. I think one is called Vine Hill Drive, and it really was a need at the time. This is post-World War II. And there is a need for affordable housing, especially for GIs who had come back from the war. And so housing developments go in most of the land that was owned by the Beach family. But Beachland Park itself remains as a really great example of the open space that the Beach family had owned as Vine Hill Farm. And I think just a great legacy to leave to remind us that there was a farm here, which who could believe in West Hartford that there were farms anywhere, but there were. So the next time you come out here to Elmwood and enjoy Beachland Park, I hope you remember the Beach family and can imagine as you're standing here on South Quaker Lane that you could look the whole way up to South Main Street from here, and it was all land owned by the Beach family and part of Vine Hill Farm. And it really is proof that history is all around us, and a lot of times it is hidden in plain sight, which is the whole point of us doing this tour. So I hope you enjoyed our tour today. I hope you learned a little bit, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much.